It's Halloween 2014, and publisher Gun Media and development team Elphonic announced a new video game series dedicated to the horror films of the 1980s, with its first installment titled Slasher Volume 1, Summer Camp, an asymmetrical horror game meant to pay homage to the Friday the 13th franchise, in which 6 to 18 counselors try to survive the night at Camp Forest Green while being hunted down by a deranged killer. But this wasn't just another indie horror game. Gunn brought on Tom Savini, the legendary makeup and special effects artist, to be the executive producer of the game.
Would you mind introducing yourself to the audience
Well,
and
yeah,
what you do?
I'm Tom Savini, makeup effects artist, created Jason for the original Friday the 13th.
And Harry Manfredini, the composer behind Jason Voorhees' iconic theme.
I mean, it's about as iconic gets, you know.
Thanks.
Yeah,
It's another nickel for me.
exactly.
To create the game's score. Oh, and they hired Jason Voorhees himself, Kane Hodder, to do the mocap. Really, it was clear from the start that Gunn and Elphonic were setting out to get as close as they could to making an F-13 game without using the IP. Summer Camp's announcement trailer eventually caught the eye of no one other than Sean Cunningham, director and producer of the original Friday the 13th film, who then promptly reached out to Gunn Media. Was he planning to shut the project down? Had the team flown too close to the sun and now awaited a cease and desist letter? No, actually. Sean Cunningham didn't want to stop the fan game. He wanted to upgrade it to a full-blown F-13 game. After meeting with Gunn, Cunningham was so impressed by the team's efforts that he granted them with the Friday the 13th license with no upfront charge.
Working on Slasher Volume 1, Summer Camp, a game which, while not directly Friday the 13th, sure has a lot of the flavor of Friday the 13th without kind of, being right there on the nose.
Correct. I mean, that's kind of what this set out to be. It was my love letter to Friday the 13th. It was just so coincidental and serendipitous that he got my love letter.
An indie development studio that originally set out to create a love letter to Friday the 13th would now get to make an official entry to one of the largest horror franchises in the world, converting Slasher Volume 1 Summer Camp into Friday the 13th the game, a decision that would eventually lead to the game's demise. After a very successful Kickstarter campaign, Friday the 13th the game was released on May 25th, 2017, with mixed reviews from critics. Many praised the game for its clear love for the franchise, capturing the scary and sometimes goofy nature of the films perfectly, and others hailed its first depiction of Jason, feeling like an unstoppable force when playing as him and a terrifying threat when tasked with surviving against him. However, many complained about its half-baked launch, with constant server issues and game-breaking bugs plaguing the game. Eurogamer even went as far to compare the experience to watching an excellent film in a movie theater that's on fire. But somehow, the game still blew up, selling 1.8 million copies only a few months after launch. Against all odds, the game was a success, and the developers didn't slow down. Throughout 2017, they fixed bugs, added new content, and in December of that year released the Virtual Cabin 2.0, which was essentially a giant Easter egg hunt. And at the end of it, they revealed what was coming next. Uber Jason from the 2002 film Jason X would be taking the game into outer space. But just as quickly as the game took off, it all suddenly ended. In June of 2018, Gun Media announced that Uber Jason and his map would not be coming out. In fact, all future content for the game had been halted. But why would a team that was so passionate about the game suddenly cease support for it only a year after launch? Well, to answer this question, we must go back 40 years prior to the year 1978. After the success of Halloween, Sean Cunningham wanted to dip his toe in the slasher genre. He already had a title in mind, I'm sure you can guess what, but he didn't have a story. So he hired Victor Miller, a screenwriter, to create the script for what eventually would become the first Friday the 13th film, after which Miller and Cunningham would go their separate ways. Now things went pretty smoothly for Cunningham for the next 38 years. Friday the 13th had ballooned into a $500 million franchise, and Jason Voorhees had become a household name. Until 2016, when Miller began petitioning Cunningham for the rights to the original film. Cunningham quickly retaliated by initiating a lawsuit against Miller that same year. The lawsuit would center on if Miller had the right to claim ownership of the original film. Regardless, now that Friday the 13th's ownership had been put into question, nothing using the IP could be released until the lawsuit was settled, including any new content for F-13 the game. This lawsuit put the team in an impossible situation. With the uncertainty around when the lawsuit would end, the team couldn't risk creating new content that may never see the light of day. So unfortunately, they made the difficult decision to move on to other projects, leaving Friday the 13th the game behind. And for the next 5 years, the game remained in a sort of limbo between life and death. It was still playable, but without any new content, the player base slowly dwindled. But some dedicated fans continued playing and held out hope that the game would someday be revived. However, all discussions of a revival came to an end on June 8th, 2023, when Gun Media announced that they were losing the Friday Friday the 13th license, and the service would be shutting down after December 31st, 2024. And just like that, the game finally had an expiration date. Ironically, the announcement of the game's imminent end actually sparked a revival in the player base, with many YouTubers and fans returning to the game to pay their respects before it went offline forever. Yet, time ticked on, and just as Gunn said, Friday the 13th servers went dark as the ball dropped in Times Square, bringing the slow, painful death to a game with so much promise to an end. Friday the 13th, the game reached a frustrating end. It wasn't abandoned because the developers didn't care because the players left. It was frozen in place by a legal battle that had nothing to do with the game itself. What started off as a passion project built by people who clearly loved the franchise turned into one of the most authentic Friday the 13th experiences ever made. And just as it found its footing, it lost the ability to grow, all because of a decision that at the time seemed like a dream come true. Turning Summer Camp into an official Friday the 13th game is exactly what killed it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and it's a little different than the last one. Subscribe so you don't miss when I upload. See ya.